to the extent that we do know, for the subset of the companies that have said something publicly, a lot of it seems to be focusing on the r-enantiomer of MDMA. And so there's, at least 3 companies that have said they're interested in developing the r-enantiomer of MDMA. So, an enantiomer is, essentially like a handedness for a molecule. If you draw a molecule out in 2 dimensions, the way we normally see them, we normally emit the hydrogens from that are sticking off almost every place. And if you drew in the hydrogens, it would become more apparent that there's some like points in some of these molecules where you can have like a handedness phenomenon where, sort of flat, like your hands might look sort of the same, but in 3 dimensions, like one like sticks out and one, in one direction and one goes the other way.
So simply put, almost like a left side and a right side mirror image of each other.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you synthesize molecules like MDMA, and really all the ones we've talked about, you will get this, depending on essentially like how the molecules randomly come together, you will get some of them are left-handed and some of them are right-handed. And because we're talking about such a large number of molecules being synthesized because they're tiny, so like, even a milligram has a huge number of molecules, you end up just statistically with having it be 50% left-handed and 50% right-handed. And, it turns out that this makes a big difference in terms of interacting with, receptors and proteins and enzymes and things like that. So a lot of the activity from MDMA is probably from the s-enantiomer, and the r-enantiomer is less active. But if you take a higher dose or put a higher concentration into, some assay system, you will find that the r-enantiomer does have effects, but it has much less ability to release dopamine. And so these companies are interested in the r-enantiomer of MDMA in part because it seems less dopaminergic, which makes it seem like kind of less potentially toxic.
And to clarify, assay is where you test its activity, right? Like a bioassay is giving it to some biological system. A self-bioassay is giving it to yourself, reporting effects.
Yep. It's just another name for like a test.
Right. And when you're talking about s-MDMA, r-MDMA, in the development of one enantiomer over another, the right term here, analog. An example of this would be ketamine, and was it Johnson & Johnson proprietarized and released just the s-enantiomer, called it s-ketamine, and had it approved for, depression, etc. And so listeners might be able to be like, oh, okay, that's kind of like, that's what s-ketamine is the s-enantiomer of ketamine, which has an R and an S. Is that about right?
Exactly. That's exactly correct. Yes. And sometimes this is really just a trick for the companies to get a new patent and extend their ability to have exclusive rights on a molecule and, market it. But sometimes there are significant differences in the therapeutic value or the safety of the molecules. And so, it can be hard to tell which one is the case in a given molecule. So yeah, a lot of the companies are focusing on MDMA itself. And my opinion is that I would be surprised if the r-enantiomer ends up being really valuable therapeutically. And that's just because all the people I've heard who've tried it, so like Sasha Shulgin tried it, Rick Doblin's tried it, most of them have been underwhelmed by it in terms of the experience. And my hypothesis is that the experience of MDMA and Entactogens is central to the therapeutic value.